This is a first networking event of its kind. My name is Rebecca Luber, and I'm the Director of Career and Business Engagement with the University of Minnesota Alumni Association. So thank you so much for joining us this morning and for registering for today's event. And the purpose of Coffee and Career Connections, industry focused, is just to really unite people, to bring folks together, have a shared common interest in a particular industry of interest. And today our focus is on the IT industry. And so we're really hoping to create community amongst folks within the University of Minnesota alumni community and really bring folks together to learn about career transitions, career progression, and just overall best practices in terms of professional development and so forth. So hopefully folks joining us today really get something out of the conversation, whether there's 30 of us or 9 of us. I think this will be a really good session altogether. So we're gonna get started here with our next slides. And so our alumni webinar series is powered by the members of our Alumni Association. And so if you're attending this today, you can thank our members for making this possible. If you'd like to learn more, you can learn more about that on our website that's listed here on the slide, which is umnalumni.org/membership. And then I also like to talk about our Maroon and Gold Network and our Minnesota Alumni Market, which is, so our webinar today is presented by the Maroon and Gold Network and the Minnesota Alumni Market. The Maroon and Gold Network is a free online platform from the University of Minnesota Alumni Association for career-related advice, networking, and mentorship. So in some ways, you could think of it as a LinkedIn just for University of Minnesota folks. And it's a great place to network with one another, meet with one another, and you can even schedule meetings right through the platform. And so you can sign up today for the Maroon and Gold Network at maroonandgoldnetwork.umnalumni.org. And I'm happy to share that information with everyone after today's event. I'd also like to give a shout out to our Minnesota Alumni Market, which is a first of its kind online store that's dedicated to supporting U of M alumni businesses and their products. You can learn more at mnalumnimarket.com. So lots of great products there, something to think about for holiday shopping and so forth. All right. So if you like today's webinar, you might be interested in some other topics coming up. We have an Ask Your Recruiter LinkedIn. So on that panel, we'll have 3 panelists who are recruiters talking about how they utilize LinkedIn to secure candidates and give best practices to candidates in terms of how to amp up their profile. And then if you like to work on your LinkedIn profile more in depth, you can register for the Masterclass LinkedIn. The deadline to register for that is October 2nd. And then as you can see, we have another panel on finding a job with the state of Minnesota or city of Minneapolis on October 21st. So just a few announcements. And then if you're listening in, you're tuning in right now by maybe your laptop, but rather listen in by phone, you can do so by dialing 646-558-8658 and then entering the webinar ID, which is 969-6085-5079. And then I'll talk a little bit more about what to expect, but this is just an overview of the event today. We'll have each of the panelists provide brief introductions after this slide here. And then I'll be asking questions of our panelists. That we have preset questions that I'll be asking our panelists, about 4 of those. And then we'll take questions from audience members through the chat feature. And then once you answer those questions in the chat feature, I will pose those questions to our panelists. Panelists are also welcome to pull questions out of that chat too, as we have time for that. And then we'll move into breakout sessions for the last 15 or 20 minutes or so. And then the breakout sessions will have each of the panelists serve as your room hosts, and they'll help engage, prompt the conversation with some networking questions that we have already presets for our hosts to lead those conversations in those breakout rooms. And then we'll bring everyone back to the main room for the last 2 minutes. And so that's kind of the overview of what to expect today. And for the breakout sessions, before we get to that, I might need just a minute or 2 just to organize those, manually organizing that, and then we'll go from there. And so, yes, the recording of this will be sent out to everyone who's registered or attended for this event. afterwards within about 2 business days, and we'll also send out a survey to gather your feedback. And then any LinkedIn profiles that were shared during today's webinar will be shared during the registration, will be shared with those who have expressed that they'd like to share them. All right, and I can explain more about that in an email. So without further ado, I believe it's time to introduce our panelists. So we'll start with Michael. Michael, feel free to introduce yourself. Just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your role and your affiliation with the U and so forth.
Sure, I'm Mike Benz. I am in Minneapolis, and I started out my career, I think I made about 5 career changes in the first 5 years of my life, but I have a liberal arts degree, and I went back to school 2 or 3 times before I was 25. I eventually got into software development and in the IT world, and I was doing package implementation for a while, like SAP, Oracle, kinds of things like that. And I got into network engineering and found a niche in project management and IT leadership, which I've been doing for a couple of decades. About 5 years ago, I went back to school at the U of M, and I got a degree in a master's degree in security technologies. And I'm currently a master's student in a degree called the Management of Technology and the Technological Leadership Institute. Both of those are 2-year programs. I spend a lot of time involved with the University of Minnesota, and I try to balance that with my work, where I have been an IT executive at different companies, and now I'm selling my services to companies who could use a part-time chief information officer or vice president of IT, or a kind of an interim person. So anyway, I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm real happy to be a part of the University of Minnesota as a full-time student, a part-time student, and an alumni.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Grant Ecker. Grant Ecker is tuning in, I believe, by phone right now. Feel free to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, I was able to figure out how to get in. It took me a little bit of extra clicking around, so I'm here.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. So my name's Grant. I am currently the Vice President of Global Enterprise Architecture at Walgreens Boots Alliance. And some of you may not have heard of the company. It's the parent company to Walgreens. They also have the UK business Boots and Alliance Healthcare, which is a Europe pharmacy wholesaler. I started my career in the technical track, building out large implementation programs, eventually moving into management, and pursued my degree at Carlson for an MBA while I was kind of 5 years or so out of school. Took the long road. It took about 7 years to graduate. Moved to Lowe's Home Improvement in retail, and I also moved through Medtronic. And in the last 2 legs of my career, I've been mostly focused on enterprise architecture. And that's actually what brought me to this opportunity at Walgreens Boots Alliance. I joined in the last month, and I've been ramping up into this new role.
Thank you, and congratulations on your new role.
Thank you.
Next, we have Suri, but I'm not sure if he was able to join us this morning, and I don't see that he is as a participant right now. So if he joins us, I'll have him introduce him when he joins. So next, we'll have Jennifer introduce herself. Nipun introduce himself, and then Jennifer.
Perfect. Hey, hello everyone. My name is Nipun. I graduated from the University of Minnesota with a bachelor's degree in computer science in 2016. After that, I spent the first 3 years at a company called PH Data, which was a data consulting company, and just really helped lots of companies inside the Twin Cities area with getting value out of their data assets. After that, I spent about a year at a healthcare software company called Praxis, where I was building some software and just, I guess, helping with technology coordination. It was a really small company, so doing pretty much anything that needed to be done. And within the last month or so, I've joined a gaming platform company called Roblox, where I'm working as a data engineer on the search and discovery team. So helping gamers find the games that they love.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next, we have Jennifer.
Hey, I'm Jennifer. Welcome. I'm a Mexican-American daughter of 2 immigrants from Mexico. I graduated from Carlson with a degree in MIS and marketing. I started at a high-tech startup firm. We were building and deploying software for hospitals and clinics for the emergency rooms, actually, in the ORs. Then I moved in to upgrades and started actually upgrading systems across the country, which was wonderful. I got to work with many prestigious hospitals across the country. From there, I moved into the QA space, and actually I'm now a senior consultant. I work for a tech firm, and I go project to project. So I definitely moved out of healthcare IT and into a lot of other industries, which I've found very exciting, working not only with different teams and projects within companies, but also across the different companies, because they are very different. So I've definitely enjoyed my entire career, and even my time looking back at Carlson and what it gave to me.
Thank you so much for those introductions. I really appreciate it. So next we're going to move into our panelists' questions that we have prepared. And so the first question is, how would you describe the culture of your field? And let's go Jennifer, then Grant, Mike, and Nipun.
The culture of my field right now, I'm in the QA space, working in a work stream with global resources. I definitely, it's difficult to get to know people like on a personal level. However, it's definitely very intriguing to deliver my part of the project with resources wherever it is that they may be. I definitely have to be attentive, detailed, very organized because of the time of day and the differences across the world with the time. It could be Costa Rica, it could be Romania, it could be India, and it could be California. So definitely there's a lot of different with the cultures in each area. So I enjoy it, and I'm definitely have to be ready, prepared at 5 in the morning, or it could be something later at night. So
Thank you. And then we'll have Grant go, and then Mike, and then Nipun.
Sure. So I think one of the things you'll notice in our industry is the culture is very different by role and by company. It's sort of like different layers of a fishbowl, right? You might find, or maybe even an ocean, right? Some areas are going to be warmer, closer to the equator. Other areas will be chilly. So I think that there's really a good variation in culture. So start with a retailer. They're going to have an aggressive, fast-paced, competitive atmosphere because there's a very fast pace to the consumer. In consumer packaged goods, in my time at General Mills, it was a little bit more of, I don't know, I guess I just call it heart. There was a lot of ideas around how we, I guess I just almost look at it like a children's book. We're kind of coloring in the lines, and every day is kind of that way. It's just much more of a relaxed culture, and that was actually probably 2 decades ago. Things have changed quite a bit, and then I found at Medtronic, it was sort of this culture really focused on patients and how we can save patient lives, and that's similar to what's carried over into Walgreens, of course, having a patient focus as well. So that trickles into the IT organization, right? So if it's more of a relaxed culture like General Mills, I've noticed that, you know, there's just a little bit more care and caution taken through the day of how people are checking in. In a retail culture, it's less about how you're doing, it's more about what you've done in the last week, and, you know, did you get that thing done, and is this moving? And then in the healthcare space, there was a very big impact on, you know, how this was going to influence and impact patients. So if you could articulate how your work connected to kind of how the company was pacing, I noticed that was pretty resonant in the culture. And if you weren't necessarily attuned to that, you'd always, like if you brought kind of a caring, I'll say, relaxed focus into retail, you might have your head spin a little bit in terms of how the culture might consume your approach. So that's just a little bit on how I notice the company impacts how you engage in different organizations.
I found that I've probably worked for 25 companies in my life, and I would say that the culture is so different depending on the company. It almost doesn't make any difference which industry you're in. I think if you work for one law firm, it might be so tremendously different from another law firm. It may be more similar to a manufacturing operation. And what I found out is in the beginning, I started working in IT a long, long time ago. And IT people were the nerds in the back room who did all the brain work and didn't really understand the business. And now for many companies, IT is the business. They're not making widgets. They're not pushing things out the door. And so the focus has to be on technology, especially in innovation and technology. And I think the culture in most technology organizations is innovation, communication, cooperation, and always looking out for what's going to be happening next. So it's I like the culture in this industry, but I couldn't pin it down to say it's always one thing. It's different no matter depending on where you are and what year it is.
Thank you. Nipun, did you want to add anything to those comments?
Yeah, so I'd say that I largely agree with a lot of what people have said here. For example, just through something as simple as dressing, right? Like I would never wear this shirt to work where I work right now, right? So I think it totally depends on among other things, the industry in which you're in, the location of the company, and things like that. And I think, especially right now, I think I started remotely. So things like culture really start mattering in terms of how you speak to other people, how you reach out to other people. And especially at Roblox, I think like the mission's really focused on connecting the world through play. So there's this sort of open culture in terms of people reaching out to each other, speaking to each other. But I think the other thing that I'd say that I found common among the different companies that I worked at is this strong culture of knowledge sharing, right? The industry that we operate in just operates such a fast, cutthroat pace that everybody really needs to get their heads together and share whatever they know to be able to compete, for the company to be able to compete as a whole. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Great, thank you so much. So our next question is, how do most people get into this field, and what are some highly sought after hard and soft skills? Or soft skills. And then we'll start with Mike, then Grant, Jennifer, and then Nipun. Sorry, you're last. I'll do it differently next time.
I think people get into the field with some technical skill that shows value to an employer. Either you know how to code, or you know how to do web development, or you know how to do documentation. And most people, in fairly short order, find some other role in the organization where they show value to the organization. The needs of companies change really rapidly, and the interests of individual contributors change really rapidly. So I think you got to have one credential that gets you in the door. I have a degree, I know how to do this particular thing, and then the horses are out of the gate. And for a wise employee, they're always looking for their next step in the organization where they can make a difference.
Thank you.
I think I was next.
Yes.
So I agree. It comes from a technical background. I think that learning some basic skills with technology is very important. An entry point into the field, years back, service desk was really common. Most recently, I've also seen business analyst as a good entry into the field. If maybe you're in a business-facing function and you want to start to work on some of the technology projects, you can start to make your way into IT as a business analyst. That's a really common road. Or even more recently, if you sort of go into the strategy ranks of business, you might move into a business architect type of a role. You also see business relationship management is another entry point. So if you are a senior leader and you're going to be moving closer and closer to IT projects, you might move into a business relationship management role where you effectively are the interface on the other side of the business IT line, where you're going to be representing IT, but understanding what the business needs. So it's generally, if you're going to come up in the technical ranks, you got either a technical background, coming to help desk, coming to development, that kind of a thing. Or if you're going to come in from the business, you're likely on the other side of the line and you switch sides. Another one that's a little bit less common I'd look at is project management. So if you've managed projects in operations, if you've managed them in other spaces and you have a PMP, those skills are quite transferable and you can manage a technical project. So that's the last track I'd highlight, but that is in no way exclusive. It's just kind of some of the initial roads that you may take.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Jennifer?
I definitely agree with what's already been said. Definitely look at, I would just add to look at the IT team itself and figure out if you do want to go technical or business or in between. So the biggest thing is continue to learn, and learn. Whether that be, you know, these certifications even that the university has. I haven't taken one myself there, but I have other certifications. They can be a week, can be 2 weeks, you know, just to get your feet wet as far as what is agile, what is business analysis, and even project management. And then also to even go up to meetup.com. That's another way to get into the field, and go to the project management meetups, go to the DevOps meetups. I mean, see what these professionals are talking about, because they are talking about current problems, challenges that they have, and what are they doing to overcome them, because you're going to get a lot of insight from the professionals in the current field, because they're talking about them, and it's free. You meet people, you get your network bigger, you meet recruiters. So that's an excellent way to get into the field. Small certifications and meetups. Highly sought after skills. Well, that again depends upon how technical you want. You'd have to continue to sharpen skills, whether you're a developer or a BA. There's always, you know, again, go to the university. There's tons of groups that meet. You know, you could have a webinar. You know, quick learning. You know, that's the key, is quick learning all the time. To expose yourself and to continue to be competitive in this field, so you can get off, number one, get in off the ATS from applying for a position, and then also getting that interview and actually keeping the job once you get an offer is continuing learning. You have to continue to learn.
Thank you so much.
I think, you know, everybody here has covered a lot of stuff, and I'd just like to say that one of the interesting things that's happened is that, you know, there's, you know, I guess increasingly there's less of a focus on a specific degree per se, and more so on, you know, just the broad skill sets that are required. I've seen a lot of people enter the field even without a degree when they have, you know, the right background, whether it's from a boot camp or from, you know, just, you know, taking a course online and just having the right necessary technical skill set. I'd just like to add one more thing. I think, you know, Jennifer mentioned meetup.com, and I actually met with my first boss at a bar after a meetup group. So that is literally how I got my first job. So that's all, I guess.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right.
You know,
Next,
one of the things I might add on this is it's the technical skills are certainly what get you the job, but I think it's the soft skills that keep you the job. So it's really about how you're able to build your network, build influence, engage with people when they have concerns, and help them with empathy. I think some of those skills really are important as you grow in that role once you're in it, and maybe even help you get the job in the first place in the interview.
Could I add something too quickly? To his point, is definitely build that network, meet people, get that understanding from people in those spaces, because that will help you figure out what role you want to play on an IT team.
I'd love that. Again, I want to just add on to that. So one of the tips I always give folks, if they have a job they really want, is to go talk to the manager of that team and see if you can take on a couple assignments just to learn it, right? Or follow somebody who's in that space who's more in a more senior role and ask if you can take some of the more junior work off their plate. And especially if you can find a way to align it to your current job. And that's kind of the trick with internal moves, is are you able to just do part of the job and then sort of work your way in as an opening shows up, you're the natural choice.
all excellent points. And that kind of brings us to our next question, which may be our last question that we have time for before we get to questions from the audience. Our next question is, what are the most effective strategies for seeking a position in the field, advancement, or transition? I think you kind of touched on some of those points, but feel free to expand, and we'll start with Nipun this time. And then we'll go Nipun, Jennifer, Grant, Mike.
Yeah. So I think so I speak from a technical background because I'm still functioning as a technical person. So I guess from my perspective, the skill sets are really important. So keeping up to date with the skill sets that are needed for the job, whether it's through online courses on Udemy or Coursera, or one of the numerous ed tech platforms that have kind of appeared over the last few years. And I guess meetup groups are super effective, like I mentioned earlier. And in terms of transition, I think within the company, is usually a very nice place to transition, because I guess they already know you and they're more willing to take bets on you. So I think Grant gave some really good advice in terms of reaching out to the leaders of the respective organization that you want to be a part of, and just letting your interests be known, because they may really value a specific skill set that you have and you may be pleasantly surprised. So keep asking, keep talking to people. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
For me, I definitely agree with those statements. If you want that job, the strategy is go look at those requirements, and then even do a soft search on LinkedIn, do informational interviews to meet those people. You have to network. You have to get those. Once you know what those credentials, those requirements are, you have to take action to learn it. If I need this certification, I got to take the 2-week course. I got to pay for it, or get your current company in your current role to pay for it, something like that. And then, the advancement and the transition is you have to continue to build that network. You have to bridge to other people so they know you, they know what spaces you occupy, that you build their trust and their confidence in you as you continue to up your level of skills, because you don't know where a job offer may come through. But once you're building the knowledge, you're definitely getting closer to somebody giving you that opportunity in that role that you want, because you got to figure out the role, you got to figure out what the requirements, and then you got to learn whatever it is, those requirements to do the role. And then basically keep at it for transition. What could this bridge to something else, as I'm finding out what other people do on this IT team that might interest me. It's constant building yourself, building your network, getting yourself exposed.
Thank you. Grant, next we'll have you go, and then Mike.
Okay. So seeking a position in the field, I've touched on a lot. I'll go on a couple other strategies that I've noticed. Reaching out, especially, let's talk about external for a minute. So I find that LinkedIn is a really helpful tool. And if you reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'm really interested in joining your company, especially that hiring manager who you eventually would want to work for, or their leader, or even the employees in that team who have the job you want, reaching out to them and saying, hey, I'm looking for advice. I'd love to join this company. I'm really passionate about it, and I'd love to learn more about what you do and what you'd be looking for in an ideal candidate. A lot of people will take that call, particularly if you have something in common. Did you go to the same school? Hint, hint. Drop your U credentials if you're talking to an alumni, and build that genuine connection. And then, to Jennifer's point, if they tell you to take this particular training, take it, right? I mean, that's the number one way to show that you're dedicated about it. Follow back up and say, I took that training, it was fantastic. Here's what I learned. Help give me the next step. I'm going to keep going until I earn my way in, and just show that persistence and that determination. It's not going to work with everybody. You kind of got to cast your net a little bit broad. Maybe of the 6 notes you send to the peers, the manager, and the director of a team, one of them responds and actually starts to help you. But embrace that, and I'll leave some space for others to share.
My advice would be, when starting a new job, it's the perfect time to begin to look for the next one, either within the organization or outside of the organization. In my generation, people went to work for 3M or Medtronic and they stayed there for 40 years and the company took care of them. Today, the rules have totally changed. The company could dissolve tomorrow. You could find an opportunity at a new company tomorrow, or you could decide you start your own company tomorrow. So constantly being in selling mode, searching mode, and learning new things mode If you sit back in your laurels, you're going to become an obsolete person pretty quickly. What everyone else has said is building a network inside and outside the organization, making an impression on people, because jobs are found based on who you know and what they think about you, as opposed to a job ad that somebody has posted online. I don't know that I've heard of very many people at all who have found a job online. It usually comes through a former coworker, classmate, friend, neighbor, uncle, something like that.
I think we got through everyone. All right, so the question that we did miss was this next question, which can be talked about in our breakout session rooms. And so what we'll do is we'll have time for maybe just one question from the audience. So feel free, if you're tuning in, you can look at the chat function and then type in your questions there, and I'll try to pick out a question that's really broad enough to that we can answer as a group here. So feel free to add any of your chat questions. If we don't get questions, then we'll just move on to breakout rooms and I'll organize that. And then we'll go from there.
While you're typing your questions, I'll build on what Mike just shared, which I passionately agree with, actually, everything he said today. And that is, oh man, I just lost it.
That's okay.
All right. The second you join a company, he talked about, think about looking for your next job. The way I would characterize that is find somebody, at least 2 other people, who would hire you at your same job level in the same company tomorrow. So you know you've kind of got a successful base when you have at least 2 other senior leaders who would hire you as an employee on their team. So that's one of the first things I look to do in joining an organization is where is another potential landing space, and ensure that I have the support. And that also builds my network of sponsorship.
Excellent. And looks like
Quickly, go to the events that are pretty reasonable, the Minnesota High Tech or WLIT. You'll meet recruiters and everybody in IT there, and they have topical areas that they talk about. So that's an excellent way to network, have light appetizers, and you're definitely meeting HR people.
Yeah, the one I'd add to that is Think IT. That's another really good one where you'll run into quite a few IT leaders, and many of them are looking to hire. I've networked quite a bit there with potential candidates.
okay, looks like we have a question here. What do you wish you would have known prior to working at your current company, good or bad? And I'll let maybe Mike start, and then you can go from there.
I have to sell myself all the time. Nobody's just handing me, as a consultant, nobody is handing me the work and say, go down to Omaha and help this company that needs help. I need to find the company in Omaha that needs the help, sell myself, arrange it, and pretty much do the sales work. I didn't really realize that sales was such an important part of any role, but specifically in the consulting world, there aren't, at least in my organization, there aren't salespeople out there pounding the pavement, beating the bushes for me. I have to sell myself to potential clients.
Excellent, thank you.
I can add that to that too, is as a consultant myself, I didn't realize how much time I would be selling myself in different areas after I've left my actual work task roles at my client's firm. So it's always, if I'm partnering to volunteer somewhere, my first priority is to be with my consulting tech firm and do these activities, because it's business brings in, you know, everything to keep the company. So that's huge. I didn't know that. It's a good thing. I just didn't realize.
And one of the things I wish I'd known coming in was just more of the context of what was happening in the organization. So, you know, when you got the month or so before you've joined, when all the screening activities are happening, you try to read what you can in the news. But the more you can learn before you start, the more effective you'll be in startup. So I'd suggest that anyone who's in transition and about to start a role, pester your new boss, pester your new colleagues, ask them to send you anything they can, because it'll really speed your ramp up and give you a lot more of a smooth landing when you come into the role.